You're going to love this. Trust me, what you're seeing now is my normal state.
Welcome, I'm Spaghetti King, and this today will be this video which keeps popping up in my recommended. No clue what it is, have never seen it. Johnny Harris, a story of YouTube propaganda. Oh, let's get that off the screen there. Pretty rough name, right? So, Johnny Harris, I've watched a good amount of what he does, even when he was on Vox, and before he had his own channel and this and that. So Johnny Harris is this like journalist dude who, again, used to work on Vox, which is this left-wing kind of publication. And then he, I guess, went out and did his own thing. His videos now are quite similar to what he did on Vox. It's pretty much the same kind of a thing. He has his own team, does these little mini documentary things. And I've watched him, and I thought he was fine. Like, you know, I was like, oh, okay, you know, whatever. Nothing that I've seen from him I would call propagandistic. Now, granted, I've never seen all of his videos. I've seen a good amount of them, I would say, you know. But whatever. Apparently, this video says he is propaganda. So I'm not like, I don't know, I'm not like the biggest fan. I'm not going to come in here and be like, yeah, Johnny Harris, this is why he's actually great or whatever. But, I'm just interested to hear how Johnny Harris has propagandized me, because I didn't think he was that out there. I thought he was fine. Most of his videos are just like reciting basic Wikipedia article history of countries and how America annexed certain places or whatever a lot of times, or topical stuff about food or whatever. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but apparently it is. So we're going to hear why it's such a big deal. Hope the video, you know, works well on the whole, on all the ends. But yeah, so it's a long video. I've never seen this. I have no clue what this is about. I'm expecting right now that it's either going to suck or I'm going to love it. I have no clue. So we'll see. What do you got to tell me? Whoever you are. Don't even know the channel name.
This is a
Tom
story
Nicholas
about YouTube, journalism, and what I think it's only right to describe as propaganda. It takes place at the unlikely meeting point between traditional news reporting, the influencer economy, and a multi-million...
Now let's get that quality there. It's going down for a second.
Influencer economy and a multi-million-dollar campaigning organization which exists to advocate for the interests of the largest corporations in the world. And it all centers on one of YouTube's rising stars of 2020, Johnny Harris.
What? What?
I'm a journalist, at least that's what I think I am.
So, a few months ago, I was sat on my sofa, mindlessly scrolling the homepage of the YouTube app, when something increasingly rare happened. The all-powerful algorithm served up a video that I was genuinely interested in. The video was by a creator named Johnny Harris, who, by all accounts, has had a pretty good year on the platform. Until 2020, Harris was a video journalist for Vox, where he created the much-celebrated and Emmy-nominated series Borders. That year, after 4 seasons, Vox made the surprising decision to cancel Borders, and Harris left the company to strike out on his own as an independent creator. He has remained prolific, combining making casual lifestyle content with continuing to produce highly polished, broadly geography-themed reportage/explainer videos. The video of Harris's I was recommended is called I'm a Journalist Who Hates the News, and is a really interesting watch. There is a lot of critique, complaint, and outright conspiracist discussion about the mainstream media on YouTube, but there's something relatively unique about hearing the perspective of a professional journalist on the current state of the press. Harris themes his critique of the news, in particular television news, around 3 headers, but they all coalesce around the same notion.
Shame that I actually haven't
Contemporary
seen
media
this video in
puts
particular.
Too much emphasis on making its reporting exciting, entertaining, or otherwise emotive in ways which actually leave us less informed about the world around us than we would be without it. Now,
Although that's
I
all of
really
media at this
enjoyed
point.
that video, just as I've enjoyed a lot of Harris's work. A month or so later, however, I was recommended another video from his channel, which was frankly alarming. And not so much for what was said, although that wasn't great either, but for the behind-the-scenes reasons for why it was said. And the exchange of, even if not money, access and support, which brought it into existence. This second video not only changed my perspective on some of Harris's other work, but also provoked some alarming questions about the future of independent journalism, in cases where, as with Harris, that journalism comes into contact with the so-called influencer economy. For it raised the prospect of a new kind of influencer brand deal, made all the more worrisome when that creator presents themselves as a journalist, where, unlike the plugs for, say, the fantastic VPN services of Surfshark that have become a mainstay of platforms such as YouTube, a creator is not paid simply to sell a product or service. It gives over creative control of their platform to those seeking to sell an idea.
Really? I've seen this video. Really?
To these concerns is titled How China Became So Powerful. For the first minute or so, it seems to be a fairly standard Johnny Harris video. An engagingly written, gorgeously edited attempt to demystify a country which most people in the English-speaking world know shamefully little about. Things take a slight turn around the 90-second mark when, in an effort to try and add some global context to his discussion of China, Harris evidences a pretty threadbare understanding of post-Second World War politics and economics. Yet, it's around the 7-minute mark when things become bizarre. At this point, Harris stops talking about China almost entirely, and instead embarks upon a polemic about the state of contemporary capitalism. Drawing on a couple of graphs, he argues that what he calls shareholder capitalism has led to massive inequality, both globally and within individual nations. He also charges shareholder capitalism with having put the very planet we live on in jeopardy through its preference for increasing profits over
And to be honest, you know,
CO2 emissions.
I actually love seeing
And
it.
of course, thus far, he's right. The truly odd moment comes when he begins to offer us a solution to these crises. Does the route to addressing inequality and the climate emergency lie in moving away from this evidently and existentially destructive system? No, he sarcastically laughs that idea off pretty quickly. The solution, according to Harris, lies in a subtle shifting away from what he calls shareholder capitalism and towards something he calls stakeholder capitalism. An idea which he defines so loosely as to make it almost meaningless, but which broadly involves corporations taking into account
so his data was right,
business
but now you're
practices,
nitpicking
people and
his solution.
planet, as well as trying to turn a profit for shareholders. In fact, Harris goes further to suggest that companies such as Walmart, Apple and JP Morgan are already doing this. Fantastic, I guess then. Crises averted. Now, I don't have a problem with polemical YouTube videos. A good deal of my channel is comprised of such content. Yet, this is not the kind of video that Harris usually makes. During his time at Fox, he was a reporter, not an opinion writer. Outside of how China became so powerful, and I'm a journalist.
Well, yes,
who
but
hates the news,
his opinion was
Harris
only one
might
expert
point
at
to
the end,
a
though.
localized problem in the country or region he's reporting on, but he
Yes.
usually steers well clear of making any pronouncements about how we can solve these problems. As vague as the notion of stakeholder capitalism might be, to hear him suddenly promoting a unified global political and economic system was, in all honesty, a bit of a shock. It just seemed out of character. At the very, very end of the video, however, we get an explanation for Harris's pivot to political idealist, which, for anyone who values journalism in any way, should be deeply, deeply worried. In the final minute, when realistically most people will have stopped watching, Harris reveals that this video was produced in partnership with an organisation called the World Economic Forum. He tells us how great the World Economic Forum is and encourages us to buy a book by their founder and current executive chairman, Klaus Schwab.
Yes, I know a lot of people hate him.
We'll talk in a second about what the World Economic Forum is, but in short, this is a promotional video. And not only in the sense of containing a brief plug within it, but in the sense that from beginning to end, this is an advert. It may be dressed up as essentially an independently created episode of Borders, yet this is not journalism. This is a piece of propaganda, produced in very close partnership with, in fact, as we'll see shortly, seemingly co-written by a very senior PR executive from an organisation which no journalist should be uncritically echoing the talking points of. The same guy who 2 months previously was bemoaning the state of journalism was now, even if not selling, at the very least lending his platform and journalistic reputation to exactly the kind of organisation which we expect journalists to be critical of. So, in order to get a sense of why someone who presents themselves as a journalist creating content of this kind is so worrying, I
thought this was going to be a more wholesale takedown.
What the World Economic Forum is. For Harris describes it merely as a think tank, and it's...
Okay, let's take a second. Number one. The only thing that matters to me in that video, that Why is China So Powerful video, is the data he provides regarding how states have grown, under capitalism. The data he provides, which this dude himself did not refute whatsoever. The data he provides is basically simply put, since around the 1980s, middle classes in richer countries have had stagnant wages, whereas poorer classes have grown to a big degree, and then shareholders / CEOs / the richest 1% have grown the most. Okay. And then, climate problems have occurred along with this as well. So, this data is true. I mean, he didn't refute it, he said it was true. So then his problem is at the end that he talks about stakeholder capitalism as opposed to shareholder capitalism. This mentality is basically that companies should not only look to maximize profits for shareholders, / their owners, but they should maximize profits for those who work within the company. They should aid those who work within the company. That's his interpretation of what should be done. And then he points you to areas in which he believes, or whatever, groups are promoting this view. Okay. So you have data, reasoned conclusion based on said data. Then you have opinion of our solution to this problem which he presented via data. Then you have a group that he's saying he believes are working towards that. Now granted, you could say, well, he was paid to say it, he was this, he was that. But personally, whenever I watched that, I said to myself, yeah, okay, like the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, whatever, yeah, these people aren't going to solve the problem, in my opinion. But if he thinks that they're doing some good, fine with me. I agree with that video. That is, I agree with the data in that video. The stakeholder capitalism idea, that's his interpretation of a solution to the problem. But the problem itself, I agree with. So then all the other things he proposes afterwards, my opinion is meh on them. Meh. So if this video is about that entirely, then that's way more nitpicky than I expected. But hey, what do you expect? So let's let this dude go. He's got a grumpy look on his face when I paused. But let's see. Give it a chance, right?
Frankly, quite boring name makes it sound fairly harmless, right? Well, to use the proper terminology, the World Economic Forum is an international, non-governmental organisation, or NGO. What this means is that it is essentially a campaigning group, which attempts to persuade both national governments and supranational organisations, such as the United Nations and the European Union, to implement certain political and economic policies. many large charities are NGOs. Alongside its direct aid and poverty relief activities, for example, the charity Oxfam also operates as an NGO which advocates for the adoption of policies which alleviate poverty and suffering. If Oxfam advocates for an end to poverty, then what does the World Economic Forum campaign for? Well, on its website, the forum describes itself, again in cryptic corporate speak, as the International Organisation for Public-Private Cooperation. Continuing that,
Cute indeed.
the forum engages the foremost political, business, cultural and other leaders of society to shape global, regional and industry agendas. In short, it seeks to bring presidents, prime ministers and other governmental figures together with CEOs and business leaders to encourage them to think about how they might work together to, as the forum describes it, make positive change. As the notion of stakeholder capitalism that Johnny Harris discusses in his video suggests, the World Economic Forum tends to remain fairly vague about exactly what positive change they are working towards. We can begin to get some idea of the kind of policies that the forum
Which makes it sound
promotes,
more
however,
relevant to
by
me.
taking a look at how it's funded.
Okay, let's see.
Whilst the World Economic Forum claims to be independent, impartial, and not tied to any special interests, its annual revenue of just over $408 million US as of 2020 comes mostly from the fees paid by global corporations such as Apple, Amazon, Google, Pfizer, Lockheed Martin, Nestle, the Coca-Cola Company, Goldman Sachs, and pretty much every other significant global company to be partners of the forum, to attend its glitzy events, and to shape the policies that it advocates for. Now, some draw on the World Economic Forum's function as essentially an advocacy and membership organisation for the richest companies in the world as the basis for highly spurious conspiracy theories. To give the most recent example of this, a key part of the World Economic Forum's activities is its organisation of the annual Davos Summit, in which billionaires, business leaders and heads of state gather in the resort town of Davos in the Swiss Alps to discuss the future of global economics and politics. The 2021 event, which owing to the continuing COVID-19 pandemic took place online and which, as we'll see, Johnny Harris
Klaus Schwab with Putin
to coincide with, saw the World Economic Forum launch an initiative which it called the Great Reset. Online conspiracy theorists soon took this foreboding title as proof that Bill Gates and the rest of the global elite were finally getting round to establishing the new world
but do you take it that way?
The truth is more mundane.
Good.
As the journalist George Monbiot put it on Twitter, the Great Reset is basically a cynical rebranding of capitalism as a
Cynical rebranding?
For the most part, it's an attempt to convince us that the World Economic Forum and its corporate partners recognise the various economic and ecological crises which our present economic system has engendered, and to make it seem as though they're going to do something about it. In reality, very little will actually change, at least when it comes to dealing with inequality and the climate emergency.
Which isn't surprising.
The Intercept, Naomi
It's lip service.
Concurs, pointing out that this kind of rebranding exercise is nothing new for the forum.
It's nothing
Since
new
the
for
early
business in
2000s,
general.
The World Economic Forum and the Davos Summit in particular have become a platform for global corporations to feign regret about the human and environmental consequences of their business practices. They regularly invite climate and inequality activists to give them a public dressing down in front of the world's press. It was at Davos in 2019 that Greta Thunberg declared that our house is on fire. That same year, the Dutch journalist Rutger Bregman garnered global headlines when he implored the summit to start talking about taxes, by which he meant that the rich needed to be paying more tax and that governments needed to be cracking down on tax avoidance. Both Thunberg and Bregman's comments received solemn nods and gracious applause from Davos attendees, but led to zero material action.
Lip service, yes.
Davos and the World Economic Forum, then, are essentially where the richest 1% go to pretend to have a conscience.
Yes.
While I'm sure there's plenty of backroom wheeling and dealing which is facilitated by the World Economic Forum, in terms of its public-facing activities, It serves as a means for global corporations and the super rich to repeatedly pretend to have seen the error of their ways and to be on the cusp of change before they go back to their boardrooms to carry on with business as usual. The World Economic Forum's decision to work with John Harris to create a video about how companies such as Apple and Walmart are currently enthusiastically moving away from shareholder capitalism and towards this vague notion of stakeholder capitalism is just another in a long line of examples of the forum attempting to convince us that, against all the evidence, they are even remotely concerned about anything other than profit. For the purposes of today's video, however, I'm not overly interested in the specific claims that Harris makes in how China became so powerful. Instead, I'm interested in the partnership between Harris and the World Economic Forum.
So you have no argument against him
Making those claims in the first place, and the warning that it represents about the growing trend of governments and advocacy organisations such as the World Economic Forum using YouTube and YouTube creators to spread propaganda and disinformation.
Okay.
We should be particularly worried about this trend in instances where those creators purport to be journalists. So this video isn't propaganda, but this portion of it has been sponsored by the fantastic VPN services of Surfshark. Protect yourself online by heading over to surfshark.deals/TomNicholas to get 83% off a 2-year plan and an extra 3 months for free, allowing you to securely and privately.
So, it's as bad as I was, hoping it wasn't, which is this dude literally is focusing on one advert at the end of this video, 20-minute video. He's focusing on like 1 minute of this entire thing. You make a 30-minute video about one little section where he's like, hey, World Economic Forum, they care about, common people benefiting from capitalism. Which, that's what they say they do. Will they do that? Most likely not. But what do you expect when business dudes say, oh, I love, I'm gonna, they say things that have good, that will get good approval ratings, that will have good public relations. That the public will be like, yeah, that's good. They say it, and then they do what they do. The result is the result. You're making a 30-minute video about this dude? Seriously? Alright, whatever.
Browse the web for just $2.21 a month. Whether you're a journalist or not, keeping your online activity hidden from the prying eyes of
advertisement time
and increasingly tracker-ridden websites is currently more important than with
sponsorship.
So many of us working from home.
Oh yeah, tell me about. Oh yeah. Tell me why your sponsorship is so great, dude. Yeah, that's right. You do that to pay the bills at home.
By essentially creating a private internet connection to keep you safe and secure.
Safe and secure, dude. Yeah.
Features, such as
I'm safe, dude.
Web mode.
You can never be too safe, right?
And malware, but also ads, and which I found has made my browsing
experience
infinitely.
Oh yeah. Your browsing experience is rocking, dude. Yeah.
Websites such as streaming.
Oh yeah. That's great. You can go on your Netflix, dude. Yeah.
Tons of extra.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic, ain't it?
So
So if you want to pay us money, and if you want to pay me money, then pay me money. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
3 months for free. You can support the channel by letting them know that I sent you through heading over to surfshark.deals/TomNicholas. Thanks again to Surfshark for sponsoring this bit of today's video. Now,
you've done your due diligence for your money. You kidding me?
Earlier in this video, I suggested that the reason that Harris's How China Became So Powerful video was so worrying was because, in addition to the fact that Harris is presenting himself as a journalist, the relationship between Harris and the World Economic Forum appeared to go much deeper.
He went off journalist mode for like 3 minutes, and then you make a 30-minute video about it.
Ad placements and shout-outs that you're likely used to seeing on YouTube. Whilst it might seem like a bit of a digression then, I think in order to explain this fully, it's useful to give a very brief sense of how such sponsorships tend to work. Now, there are many ways in which companies work with creators on this and other social media platforms to promote, usually, products and services. If you want a more complete overview, I'd suggest checking out Tom Scott's video about influencers and product placement. Generally speaking, however, there are two main types of paid brand deal on YouTube. The terminology varies, but the first is what, for today's purposes, we'll call an integration. This entails a creator making a video in almost exactly the way they would if it wasn't sponsored. The only difference is that a company will pay them to, at some point, segue into a usually relatively distinct section in which they tell you about the product or services sold by that company, much like I did earlier in this video with the Surfshark spot. The creator will normally encourage you to use a discount code or follow an affiliate link, again, just like I did, which helps the company sponsoring the video to get a sense of whether it's worth them sponsoring more videos by that creator in the future. After this, the creator will then, in most cases, segue back into the main topic of their video. An integration of this kind, then, is essentially an ad break. Companies will normally be keen to advertise in videos about topics relevant to their product or service, and will often have other topics that they'll avoid. They'll also give the creator some bullet points regarding the particular features of the product or service they sell, which they'd particularly like the creator to highlight within the integration section. Outside of this, however, creative control over the wider video is entirely in the hands of the creator. Of course, there are higher level ways in which the prospect of scoring a sponsorship might encourage creators
Get on with it,
to cover
dude.
certain topics and to avoid others which are more complex than we've got time to get into today. The company generally has no say in the content of the wider video.
Okay, good.
The second
Yeah.
type of brand deal relevant to our discussion is what we'll refer to as a sponsored post. Here, a company partners with a creator to produce a video which they otherwise probably wouldn't have made at all. In most cases, this will involve a creator making a video about a product or service the company sells and presenting it in a pretty much uncompromisingly positive light. As an example of this, we might look at this video by the channel Linus Tech Tips, in which the host, Linus, tells us how all your computer backing up needs can be solved by purchasing a device by a particular company. Where an integration essentially involves the insertion of an ad break in a video, a sponsored post is basically an advert in its entirety. From beginning to end, the whole
So you're saying that video had, like, none of Johnny Harris's own opinions? Essentially, you're saying that video is entirely, was written by the World Economic Forum? Really? Like I said, he only mentions the World Economic Forum at the very end of the video. He goes over, like, China's history, how China grew economically, goes over this data, where he talks about how capitalism has benefited mostly poor and super rich people, and middle class people have, had problems with it. He then proposes a solution to it. Whether that solution is his own or World Economic Forum's or whatever is irrelevant to me. The point is that proposal is at, like, the very end of the video. So, and you're saying the entire video is propagandistic for that reason. I think that's a ridiculous claim.
purpose of the video is to sell a particular product or service. Alongside the fact that the creator usually wouldn't have made the video at all if they hadn't been paid to, the key difference here is that the company paying for the video has significant
Well, Johnny Harris is
control
scared of
over
criticizing
the final
China.
product.
He doesn't like doing
Whilst they'll
that.
normally rely on the creator to write, film, and edit the video, they might ask for a section to be taken out, or for something to be added, in order to ensure it achieves their objective of presenting their company, product, or service in the best light. Now, in my experience, people are generally more amenable to integrations than they are to wholly sponsored posts. At least, I hope so, given that this video contains an integration. I know that as a medium-sized creator whose income through the automated ads on YouTube can vary wildly, integration deals can make a big difference in providing some kind of financial stability to my life. This is the same for a lot of creators, and I like to think that viewers understand this. When it comes to wholly sponsored posts, however, I think people are rightly more skeptical. However upfront a creator is about the sponsoring company's involvement, it's hard to eradicate the aura of insincerity, and the notion that the scales have shifted from a creator using a brand deal to better enable them to create content for their audience, to using their audience to allow them to get a brand deal with a company. Given how focused we've been on the selling of products or services in this section, it might seem to not be all that relevant to the case of Johnny Harris and the World Economic Forum. But this issue of control over the content of a video, or indeed a written article or any other kind of content, only becomes more important when it comes to that which is presented as journalism.
Are you kidding me?
So, to return to Johnny Harris, we don't know what kind of arrangement existed between Harris and the World Economic Forum. In his brief acknowledgement of the forum's involvement in the video at the very end of how China became so powerful, Harris initially suggests that they merely provided him with the graphs which he uses to illustrate some of his points. Although both graphs are freely and widely available on the internet.
I literally got those graphs in
He later
college.
described the video as having been produced in partnership with the forum. It's all very vague. Now, it's entirely possible that Harris's partnership with the World Economic Forum didn't involve the exchange of a single penny. Perhaps the allure of working with such a large and influential organisation was enough. Yet, I think the most important takeaway from our discussion of the differing forms of relationship between companies and influencers is not that money exchanges hands or how much, but this issue of control over the content. And this is where things get interesting. See, not only did the release of how China became so powerful coincide with the 2021 Davos Agenda meeting, but an alternative text version of the script for that video was included as part of a series of blog posts published on the World Economic Forum's website, which served as provocations for the wider event. The blog post is shorter than the video and is worded differently, but has the same structure, references the same events, draws on the same data sets, and makes all of the same points. The video, which Harris released on YouTube, is also embedded within the blog. What's particularly interesting is that here, it is not only Harris who appears as the author of the piece. In fact, he's only listed as the second author. The other author, who gets top billing, is Peter Van Ham, the head of communications for the World Economic Forum's chairman's office, and who, as a side note, co-wrote the book on stakeholder capitalism by the World Economic Forum's executive chairman, Klaus Schwab, which Harris recommends at the end of how China became so
Yes, at the very end.
Harris's video
The last 3 minutes.
not only influenced by the talking points of the World Economic Forum,
He likes
was
the
not only
ideas.
produced in partnership with them, but was seemingly co-written by one of the organisation's most senior PR executives. In the previous section, we looked at the fairly routine practice of creators on YouTube and other social media sites handing over their platforms and reputations to companies to create whole posts which present that company's products in an uncompromisingly flattering light. And there's obviously questions to be asked about the ethics of such deals. But this, to my mind, is far more worrying. Here we have an influencer who presents themselves as a journalist, shaping their work to meet the agenda of a campaigning organisation which seeks to encourage us to view the world from a certain perspective. The perspective of the largest corporations on the globe. For, to stress the point, this is not journalism. This is a piece of promotional content seemingly co-written by a PR executive, produced as part of a much larger PR campaign which wrapped around the 2021 Davos Agenda meeting. See, in our contemporary moment, many young people, assessing the scale of contemporary inequality and of the climate emergency, are asking deep questions about how they want our worlds to be run. A 2019 poll found that 70% of millennials and 64% of Gen Zers in the United States, the ideological centre of contemporary capitalism, would be somewhat likely or extremely likely to vote for a socialist candidate for president. the World Economic Forum are more than aware of, and of the threat that this poses to the companies which fund their activities. Their partnership with Harris, then, is essentially an attempt to use his platform and voice to connect with that demographic, in order to say, hey, fellow kids, capitalism's cool, actually, and is totally going to solve all of the problems it's also causing. Coming directly from, say, Lockheed Martin or Goldman Sachs, such a statement would sound ridiculous. But place it in the mouth of a relatively young person with a hipster aesthetic, a sizable YouTube following, some ridiculously good skills on After Effects, and a reputation for high-quality journalism, and it almost sounds convincing. I do want to say that for all I've criticised Harris in this video, I don't think that all of this was necessarily a calculated, nefarious move on his part.
Good.
One thing that is noticeable in his video about hating the news is the absence of any real acknowledgement of the issue of media ownership, and how the manner in which media companies being owned by wealthy private individuals and corporations who would very much like to stay wealthy might shape the way in which they report on the world around us. Generally speaking, most journalists are either naive about these matters or are highly hesitant to admit that how their work is funded might affect their reporting.
Yeah,
We also have the
which of
fact
course
that
it does.
Harris is still likely trying to find his feet as an independent creator following Vox's cancellation of Borders, and on top of this, has found himself in the strange, weird position of being somewhere in between an independent journalist and a lifestyle influencer, both of which come with very different ethical codes. If Harris is sincere in his statements that he will be continuing to act as a journalist on his personal channel, however, then producing content in partnership with organisations such as the World Economic Forum should be completely beyond the pale. This is precisely the
He's
kind
starting
of
to kill his own
institution
argument.
that we need journalists to be critical of, to ask deep, probing questions about the intentions and motivations of, not to serve as mouthpieces for.
You see, he's beginning to announce his own weakness with this, which is, yeah, most journalists work under some kind of news group. Some conglomerate. You want to know what the problem with that is? They get a voice as a journalist to report things. However, they report things with a lens which this, conglomerate block favors. So Johnny Harris, an independent creator, decides to associate himself with another, group. He already was with Vox, who has their own political views and this and that. Johnny Harris decides to associate himself with the World Economic Forum and gives them a promotion for like a minute and then rounds off his idea of stakeholder capitalism for like 2 minutes at the end of this video. You haven't proven that everything before him even mentioning stakeholder capitalism was not his opinion. You haven't proved that. And that's actually what's relevant, because you're saying that entire video was propagandist. Well, actually, you did sort of prove it because you mentioned the whole script was aligned, right? So, okay, let's give that to you. Let's say the entire video was made by the World Economic Forum. Let's say that. Let's say the entire thing was. Even if it was, it was essentially a post from the World Economic Forum on Johnny Harris's channel, given the auspices of, Johnny Harris's impression of, oh yeah, I'm training with the young to try and make people more pro-stakeholder capitalism. You yourself have not actually announced a problem with stakeholder capitalism itself. I myself am mixed on it, but all that really matters to me is if Johnny Harris actually believes in that. I don't know if he does. But to be honest, I really don't care. Because journalists themselves live under this lens at all times. And this is one post from Johnny Harris, in this case. I can look at this with a filter. Because in my opinion, if someone can watch something and they can't filter it, that's their own problem. I watched this video, agreed with the data about the effects of capitalism on the various classes. And then when he mentioned the World Economic Forum, I went, of course, whatever they say isn't going to be all that serious. They can say whatever they want. Yeah, of course, business dudes in power are going to say something that sounds nice for regular people, but all that really matters is the stats. And Johnny Harris showed us the stats and pretty much kind of gave a semi-anti-capitalist message to a certain extent where he said, look, this is failing. Then he proposed a solution. I think that's fine. I personally think his solution won't work. But I think the problems are valid. Which means the heavy bulk of the video, I think, is good. And for that reason, I think this is a nitpick overall. The story of YouTube propaganda. One video, dude, and you're rallying out this much. I understand it more now, but to be honest, I think this video did not need to be 30 minutes long, dude. This video could have been 5 minutes long.
I want to close out this video by acknowledging that the vast majority of contemporary journalism relies on some form of advertising revenue. In the case of solely online outlets or independent journalists, it might be the only revenue stream. And that's unlikely to change in the near future. But again, the distinction lies in who has control over the content of the journalism itself. I think the prospect of a greater amount of proper, professional, independent journalism on YouTube and elsewhere on the web is really exciting. It has the potential to allow new voices to circumvent the rigid hierarchies and biases of legacy media and to provide new perspectives on current affairs. Yet, as we've seen, the manner in which such independent online journalism is likely to see it come into contact with the so-called influencer economy also leaves it open to distortion by bad actors. There are already many groups who use YouTube and other social media platforms as vectors of misinformation.
Cute Kanzuk thing.
Whole channels, such as PragerU, for example, funded by billionaires who want to encourage us to see the world in a certain way, exist to this end. Yet there's also been a rise in advocacy organisations and national governments working with creators with pre-existing platforms to help push their agendas. Just last month, The Times, the UK one, published an article about how the Chinese government is using British YouTubers to spread pro-China propaganda for the benefit of both a domestic and international audience. Last year, the conservative Canadian YouTuber JJ McCulloch also reported having been approached by someone with at least some connection to the Chinese government, asking him to post a ready-made piece of pro-China propaganda.
Look how stupid that guy's suit looks.
Kind of brand deal
tie flopping all over.
Coming into contact with those who present themselves as independent, impartial journalists, as in the case of Johnny Harris and the World Economic Forum, is particularly worrying. While Harris did at least acknowledge the partnership at the very end of his video, I think we need to resist this kind of deal becoming a norm. For else we risk finding ourselves in a scenario when all the potential for independent journalism on platforms such as YouTube is lost in a sea of paid-for misinformation which looks like journalism on the surface, but in reality is little more than propaganda. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it's been...
Lame. I get more of it by the end. I understand more of it by the end. But in my opinion, if you're at that point where you're already towing the line on YouTube community guidelines and getting sponsorships, I don't think you're independent at all yourself. In this case, Johnny Harris would have made himself less independent via this post. Overall, Johnny Harris is one of the most independent dudes because he has an audience, and he's not working with some news group, some outlet for himself. Most people, they need an outlet. They can't generate their own audience. And in my opinion, if you're working under an outlet, I don't see how you're all that independent to begin with. I mean, you're more independent than if you are literally just a corporate post, and your face is just a flag of an independent person. But Overall, in my opinion, the most independent people are the people who've already been censored already. Because they were censored because they were actually independent. That's my opinion. And I think this video is not a good video. Mainly, I think that I understand by the end his point, but I think this is an overblown point overall. But I understand more, but I still don't like this video. Don't like this video. Also, this video should have been way shorter. This video didn't need to be 30 minutes long, dude. This was way too long, way too much bland explanation of very obvious things. Things I already knew already. So, you know, I guess it was one of those made for people who have no clue about anything kind of audience, because most of this was bland explanation of things I already knew. So overall, I don't like it. Don't like it. I give a thumbs down to this video. Overall, meh, because what he's talking about, utter propaganda with what Johnny Harris said. Johnny Harris did not give unfettered propaganda. He gave a opinion. He gave data. The data's good. He gave history. The history's good. Then he gave a shout out to this corporation at the end. The only thing I care about is the shout out and him using the term stakeholder capitalism, which again is a sheer minority of that video. So again, this is a 30-minute video about a 3-minute clip from said video, essentially, roughly around that. And I think that's pretty disingenuous and pretty lame to a certain degree. Now, I understand, but overall, my overall opinion of this is negative. I understand the criticism of Johnny Harris taking that deal to a degree, but I think this is way too nitpicky overall. But I got the message out of Johnny Harris, I guess, taking money. But he already did, because he worked with before, so he already did. So I mean, you know, whatever. I mean, obviously he was more independent than this, but yeah, negative. My opinion of this is negative. So I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed. I thought this was going to be some super villain tale about how he broke down how each video was like anti-American with his like American videos going around. I was hoping it was going to be some American who was like, Johnny Harris isn't patriotic enough. He doesn't criticize China enough, and he criticizes America more than China. I thought it was going to be something like that. That would have been actually interesting. That would have been an actual argument to make, but sadly no. Some autistic argument about a 3-minute portion of one video. A 30-minute video out of that. How do these people even do this these days? How do you make a video this long, an edited video, about something that... This is how much people need to be explained to them at this point. They need this much explained to them. Because, you know, that's all these videos are. They're these overly... I mean, I guess, you know, for normal people. It's like, I expect that for a news channel. But really, dude... sorry. Don't like it. Don't like it. I'm disappointed. So, anyway. Goodbye. So, you know, with that said, I'm done. Thank you for watching. I'm Spaghetti King. I'm gonna go watch something more fun now. Love you. Goodbye.